Wash on Monday, iron on Tuesday, mend on Wednesday, churn on Thursday, clean on Friday, bake on Saturday, rest on Sunday. There is a little housekeeping rhyme that sounds almost too neat to be real. Wash on Monday, iron on Tuesday, mend on Wednesday, churn on Thursday, clean on Friday, bake on Saturday, rest on Sunday. Laura Ingalls Wilder included that rhythm in Little House in the Big Woods, so it entered the memory of generations as more than a list of chores. It was a way of giving the week a shape. If you grew up with a mother or grandmother who seemed to know what belonged to each day, you may recognize the feeling before you remember the words. Monday began with laundry. Tuesday carried the weight of the iron. Wednesday made room for mending. By Saturday, the kitchen had a different smell. Dough, heat, and bread. The point was not that a home had to look identical to another home. The point was that work could be given a place instead of arriving as one long, shapeless demand. Stay with the week, because Saturday's bread and Sunday's rest reveal why the rhythm mattered. It was not a performance of perfection. It was a way to leave tomorrow a little more ready than today. Catharine Beecher and Harriet Beecher Stowe gave this kind of thinking a plain name in the American woman's home, a habit of system and order. Their language treated domestic work as work that deserved thought, sequence, and judgment. The household was not managed by rushing at the loudest problem. It was managed by deciding what belonged together. They wrote about the right apportionment of time and about economizing time, labor, and expense. Those phrases matter because the weekly rhyme was not only decorative. A wash day gathered the wet, heavy work into one known place. An ironing day followed it. A mending day gave small repairs their own attention. In plain household language, that was system and order. Several related jobs gathered into one day's care. That does not prove that each family followed the rhyme in the same way. It does show why the rhyme endured. It gave a household a practical grammar. One day prepared the next, and the person doing the work could see the week as a sequence rather than a pile. Wash on Monday. The line is short, but the work behind it was not. Laundry meant sorting what could be washed together, working with water and cloth, and making a place for wet things to dry. The familiar tools were close at hand: a washboard, a wringer washer, and clothes hanging on a line. The washboard rasped under wet cloth. The wringer squeezed a shining ribbon of water from the sheets, and the line lifted them into the breeze with a clean soap and sun smell. The work had a beginning, a middle, and a place to stop. A sheet came down from the line, was folded, and joined the stack. A shirt waited its turn. Outside, the fabric flashed white against the yard, while inside the empty basket made room for the next load. Nothing about the scene needed a grand explanation. The tools and the repeated motion told the story. The weekly rhythm made Monday a beginning rather than a surprise. Laundry had a day of its own, so the rest of the week did not have to pretend that wet clothes, folded clothes, and waiting clothes were invisible. The line in the rhyme also carries a household memory. The movement from washing to hanging, from heavy work to air and daylight. There is a quiet logic in that picture. A repeated day created a repeated expectation. The work could be planned, tools could be kept ready, and the next day could begin with a different task in view. Monday's gift was not speed. It was a clean boundary around work that otherwise spread through the week. Iron on Tuesday. After washing came the slower work of making fabric presentable again. The object that belongs in this scene is not a modern appliance or a generic clean shirt. It is the iron, the board, the cloth laid out in front of the person working, and the particular weight of a task that had to be done with attention. The iron had weight in the hand and heat in the room. Steam softened the cloth, and a finished stack waited on the table, each piece folded into its place. There was a small satisfaction in the board filling with finished pieces. A sleeve was turned, a collar laid flat, and the iron paused before the next pass. The room was warm around the stove, but the work had its own quiet rhythm. When the last item was folded, the result could be seen and touched. A neat stack waiting for the people who would wear it. The rhyme gives ironing its own day because it was different from washing. That distinction is the important historical detail. A household did not have to complete each stage of care at once. The week's order separated one kind of concentration from another. Tuesday could carry the visible finish of Monday's work. Beecher and Stowe's phrases help explain the arrangement without turning it into a claim that one schedule ruled households. Right apportionment of time means deciding what deserves a block of attention. Economizing time, labor, and expense means noticing that order can prevent needless repetition. In that sense, the iron was part of a system, not merely an object. The rhythm also made room for memory. Many older viewers remember not only the finished clothing, but the sound and weight of the work. A day assigned to ironing gave that memory a place in the week. Mend on Wednesday. The rhyme turns toward repair in the middle of the week. This is the smaller, quieter work. A garment held close, a needle and thread, a basket of things that are not ready to be discarded. Wednesday gives those small repairs a place to wait, then a quiet hour in which to be finished. A needle rested in the little basket beside the lamp. In the evening light, a loose seam came together stitch by stitch, while the familiar rhyme waited on the sampler or dish towel nearby. Mending asked for a closer kind of attention than cleaning. The basket held little interruptions in the life of the family, a hem, a button, a place where cloth had pulled apart. Under the lamp, those interruptions became manageable. The garment returned to the drawer with its small weakness strengthened, and the basket held a little less for the next evening. There is a useful calm in giving repairs a day. A loose seam can wait until Wednesday without becoming a crisis on Monday. The household can collect the work, inspect it, and finish one piece before moving on to the next. That is system and order in an ordinary form. Not a grand theory, but a place for the small jobs that keep larger routines working. The rhyme's survival also tells us something about how people remembered work. It was compact enough to be repeated, sung, stitched into a sampler, or printed on a dish towel. The words made the week portable. A child could learn the sequence before understanding the labor behind it. Wednesday was therefore about more than saving cloth. It was a pause in the week to notice what could be restored and to keep restoration from being postponed indefinitely. Churn on Thursday. In the rhyme, this is the day the household turns toward the kitchen and the work of making butter. The butter churn belongs at the center of the scene, a wooden handle, a deep vessel, and cream slowly changed by the work of a hand. The churn set a steady rhythm in the kitchen. The handle moved, the cream thickened, and the room filled with the small sounds of work that had been given a day of its own. The kitchen did not have to be silent for the churn to be heard. There might be a pot nearby, a towel over a chair, or a window open to the yard. The handle made its round path, and the person working could settle into it. A day assigned to churning gave the task a familiar doorway into the week. The power of the line is its placement. Churning was not simply added to whichever day already felt crowded. It had a home in the sequence. That gave the person doing the work a chance to prepare for it, and gave the rest of the household a shared expectation of what Thursday meant. Beecher and Stowe's idea of uniting several objects in one employment is useful here. Their phrase is about arrangement. Grouping work so time and labor are not scattered without thought. The rhyme turns that principle into memory. Wash has its day, iron has its day, mend has its day, and churn has its day. The point is not a calculation. It is the feel of a Thursday kitchen. Thursday shows a household using sequence to make repeated work legible. A tool, a task, and a day belong together. That connection could make a busy week feel less like a surprise. Clean on Friday. The day turns toward floors, rooms, cloths, and the work of putting a home in order before the weekend. A Friday reset could be as ordinary as a rinsed cloth, a swept floor, and chairs returned to their places. It is the rhyme's place for the broad reset. By Friday, the house could feel the weekend approaching. A cloth moved across the floor, a chair returned to the wall, and rooms that had carried the week settled back into order. The reset was made of small movements rather than a single grand effort. A cushion was shaken, a cloth was rinsed, and a familiar object returned to its place. By the time the light changed outside, the rooms looked ready to receive the weekend. The work disappeared into the background, which was part of its comfort. After washing, ironing, mending, and churning, cleaning gathers the week back into the rooms where people live. A weekly rhythm can be felt in that return. The work is not only about removing dirt, it is about making the house ready for the next turn of activity. The kitchen for baking, the rooms for company or rest, and the household for Sunday. This is where Beecher and Stowe's habit of system and order becomes visible as a domestic landscape. Their language about economizing time, labor, and expense is not a promise that organized work feels easy. It is an argument for giving effort a pattern. A pattern can keep small duties from multiplying through neglect. The Friday line also keeps the emotional tone balanced. The point is not spotless perfection, it is the weekly reset, a known moment to bring the rooms back toward readiness before the final work of the week. Bake on Saturday. This is the line many people can almost smell before they finish hearing it. Bread in the mixing bowl, dough rising near the stove, the oven breathing heat into the kitchen. Saturday gathers the work around something warm and shared. The strength of the image is already there. Dough rose in a bowl near the warmth of the stove. Then the oven took over, and the smell of bread moved from the kitchen into the hall and under each door. The waiting was part of the memory. Dough rested under a cloth, then the hands returned to shape it. The oven door opened and closed, and the warm smell gathered in the kitchen before it reached the rest of the house. A loaf on the table made the week's work feel close to the people who would eat it. Saturday gathers the week into something shared. After the practical work of washing, ironing, mending, churning, and cleaning, the kitchen becomes the center. A bowl of dough needs time. Bread needs heat. The task is physical, but it also marks a change in the week. Work is becoming food, and food is becoming the welcome of the weekend. The placement makes the rhyme feel designed rather than random. Right apportionment of time can mean keeping the work that depends on preparation for the day when the household is ready to receive it. System and order can end not in a chart, but in the smell of a loaf coming out of the oven. That is why the Saturday line is worth carrying forward. It does not tell us to recreate a past schedule. It reminds us that a week can have a center, and that useful work can end in something warm enough to be remembered. Rest on Sunday. The last line does not add another production task. It leaves space for worship, a quiet breakfast, a visit, or simply the sound of the house settling. We do not need to turn that line into a sermon. Its place in the week is enough. The pace loosened. A clean room held the soft light of morning, and after worship or a quiet breakfast, there was space to sit, visit, and hear the house breathe. Rest did not erase the work that came before it. It let the family feel the difference between a task waiting and a task that could wait. A chair by the window, a quiet table, a walk home from worship, or a visit with family could occupy the day. The rhythm had made room for that stillness. Rest comes after baking because the rhyme imagines a household that has completed a cycle. That does not mean the work was finished forever. Monday would come again. The value was in the return. A person could pause without believing that pausing meant the household had been abandoned. Laura Ingalls Wilder's connection to the rhyme matters here because it shows how the sequence traveled through memory and story. The words were not only instructions, they were a small cultural object, repeated across generations and attached to the feeling of home. The final day also protects the meaning of the other days. If the week contained only wash, iron, mend, churn, clean, and bake, it would be a demand. Rest changes the rhythm into a human pattern. It says that order is meant to support life, not replace it. The old weekly rhythm survives because it names something many households still recognize. Work felt steadier when it had a place. The rhyme carried the sequence in a few lines. Beecher and Stowe supplied the language of system and order, right apportionment of time, and economizing time, labor, and expense. Wilder carried the rhythm into a story that readers remembered. No two homes kept the rhythm in quite the same way. What mattered was the feeling of a pattern. A household could create a pattern. A pattern could make repeated work visible, and a visible pattern could leave a little room for rest. Maybe that is why the words still feel familiar when they are printed on a sampler or a dish towel. They are not asking us to live inside a museum. They are offering a way to notice the shape of a week. One day for the heavy beginning, days for care and repair, a day for making bread, and a final day to stop. The house was not calm because nothing needed doing. It was calmer because tomorrow had a place in the plan. If your family kept a day-by-day rhythm, share the memory in the comments. And if this kind of household history is worth keeping, subscribe so the next forgotten routine has somewhere to land. A weekly rhythm did not make a household weightless, it gave the weight a handle. Monday could hold the wet sheets, Tuesday could hold the warm iron, Wednesday could hold the loose seam, the churn, the cleaning cloth, and the bread bowl each arrived in their own time. Then Sunday opened a quiet space. That is the part worth remembering when the rhyme comes back to us. It was not a promise that one family looked like another. It was a small way of saying that care could be organized, felt, and shared. Beecher and Stowe called it system and order. Wilder carried it into a story. Families carried it in memory, in a sampler, or on a towel by the kitchen sink. The words still make a week feel possible. Wash, iron, mend, churn, clean, bake, rest. A home can be busy and still have a rhythm. A person can work hard and still deserve a pause. If your family had a day for washing, baking, mending, or simply sitting together, tell us what you remember. Those small details are the household history worth keeping.